the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council, Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. I'd like to begin with roll call and Pledge of Allegiance.
Councilmember Kendall?
I am here.
Councilmember Elmer?
Here.
Councilmember Paulson?
Here.
Mayor Way?
Here. If you can, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a revised agenda from what came out earlier because we had to add a urgency item at the very end, which is a closed session. So that agenda is there, and I need a motion to accept the revised agenda
So
from the
moved.
council.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 No one's opposed. So our revised agenda is in the back. It only has one change, which is at the end of the meeting, we'll have a closed session for the council. So second order of business is public comment. This is only for matters that are not listed on the agenda. This is time for the members of the public to address the city council regarding items that are not on the agenda or that are not on the consent calendar. Just approach the microphone, state your name, and you have about 3 minutes. And we're going to begin tonight with Linda Henn from the Marin Healthy Youth Partnership Coalition. And my apologies to Linda were earlier that she had asked to actually be agendized, and there was a little oversight. So she's going to give us a presentation in public comment time. But since it is public comment, we won't really be commenting as a council. So just to be clear on that. So go ahead, thank you.
For making the time. I'm Linda Henn. I'm the project coordinator for Marin Healthy Youth Partnerships, and this is Lisa Klein, and she works with me, and she'll be speaking to some of our initiatives as well. I'll try to make this fast, and I also have a handout that chronicles everything I'll be saying. Marin Healthy Youth Partnerships was formed to work collaboratively to reshape community norms that drive youth substance use. We partner with young people, families, schools, and other community organizations to promote a thriving environment. So that's our mission. Our goal is to establish and strengthen collaboration among communities to reduce substance use among youth. We are comprised of over 80 members with representatives from over 12 sectors of our community. In 2017, we received a drug-free community grant, which is a federal grant, which allowed us to address the alarming rates of underage drinking, marijuana, and e-cigarette use among youth in our communities. The communities that we serve, which are primarily in the TAM Union High School District, have higher rates of use than other counties in California and the country. This shows the black is California use, the gray is Marin use, and the red is TAM Union. And as you can see, it trends upward at a pretty alarming rate. That's cannabis, and alcohol follows a very similar trend. So the drug-free community grant that we got has allowed us to increase our capacity to create a safer and healthier environment for our youth and reduce the societal costs associated with substance misuse. We like to do what we call as environmental prevention. And what this is that it changes the environment in which our youth operate, changing things that have a more sustainable and long-lasting impact. And some of these things are like policies, like the social host ordinance. Most of the cities in Marin changed their language to include a restorative process and to include cannabis as well as alcohol and rental buses. We also, most cities and towns, fortunately, contributed to Marin being rated one of the highest ranking tobacco, I can't remember the exact terminology, but we got it like an A for the county in tobacco because most of the towns instilled ordinances that had flavor bans. And the flavor ban's important because it helps reduce the access and the influence to youth with the e-cigarettes. We also educated the community members and local town government about cannabis, and most towns decided to wait until there is more information on the impact of our young people. Lisa's going to talk about raising the bar.
So I just started in January, and I was brought on for this initiative.
initiative called, for raising the bar. And basically, this was created in 2017 to address the prevalence of adult excessive drinking. And Marin County is actually ranked one of the highest in California, and the youth ranking is similar as well. So as you can well imagine, this raises a lot of concern in our community. And raising the bar, keep youth events substance free, discourages the consumption of alcohol or other substances at youth-oriented events. And this would be for schools, rec centers, athletic games like Little League soccer, and raising the bar. We're not focused on eliminating adult alcohol. That's fine. However, as a community, we want everybody to be mindful that our behaviors does matter. Parent role modeling is very important. And I presented this data to Dick Whitley, and he's totally behind this initiative. And I'd share some of the results with him from the California Healthy Kids Survey, and maybe at a different time we can present that as well, because it's pretty important information. And so he's on board, and we just wanted you all to know about it, and hopefully you can get on board as well. The other one is Be the Influence, and that was created back in 2013, and that's to aid parents in keeping their teens substance free. And there's a database here of like-minded parents. It's called Be the Influence Parents, and they receive monthly newsletters on relevant and timely data on kids and substance use. And today, it's 2,000 parents strong throughout the Bay Area, and Be the Influence asks parents to consider not serving alcohol in their home and to keep their homes safe for kids when they're there in their homes. So, thank you.
So one thing we do a lot of is education, not only to parents but to youth. We created, with vaping surging in the past couple of years, we created a peer-to-peer education so we can educate more kids quicker. And it's called Escape the Vape. And we have high school kids that are trained, and they go to the middle schools, and then even the 8th graders are trained to teach the 6th graders. And that was very successful. In October, we had an event with David and Nick Sheff where we had we sold out at Dominican University. And then after the event, we partnered with all the local libraries, and we had a community book read and subsequent discussions about their book, Nick's latest book. And that was very successful in creating a big awareness about his journey and what he learned from it. What I liked most about what he said is he learned what it cost him, that his addiction and subsequent recovery cost him a lot. So in August every year, we've been distributing something called Community of Concern. It's a parent's guide for the prevention of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and this was distributed to 2,500 freshman families in August. And we survey every year. In fact, that survey is going out right now to see the perception of it and use. And when we did it 2 years ago, we get very high readership and interest in this material. So we partner with MCOE, Marin County Office of Education, and Marin Health and Human Services on this project. And we educated over 20 local professionals on, it's called SBIRT, Screening and Brief Intervention Referral to Treatment. We partnered with UCLA, and they brought the training to us. And this was another successful prevention tool. And we also have a K through 12 communication strategy where we produce communication for schools to send out to parents around this topic. And we send it to all the public schools in Marin County. And this was another partnership with both HHS and MCOE, and it resides on MCOE's website. We also have we have a very robust website and active social media presence. We hosted a town hall meeting with CMPA and Lori Fergoli and Don Carney in September. The key to our success is collaboration and collective impact. Working with all sectors of the community and other organizations with similar goals helps us to gain a lot more traction. Most importantly, we work with youth. We have an active youth advisory council with 18 students from 5 high schools that are very involved. Some of them have probably spoken at some of your town council meetings, and they have across the county. We couldn't do this work without them. You have to have youth at the table to help solve a youth problem. So our data, we have a very robust data collection. We helped support a community-based participatory study about jewel waste that was published in CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report in October. And it was actually authored by one of our coalition members. And we conduct focus groups with middle school students this year. Last year we did high school students. And we always use the California Healthy Kids Survey data to analyze trends. These are some of our partners. Again, we can't do this work alone, and we're very grateful and thankful that, and can't emphasize the importance of working with Larkspur. This work really began in Larkspur. Larry Chu was instrumental in getting our first grant with the state and the Central Marin Police Authority, our fiscal agent. And these leaders have been supportive and behind our efforts since 2011, when we first formalized and we were known as Twin Cities Coalition for Healthy Youth. I can't thank you enough for valuing the health and wellness of our youth with a shared goal over the past 9 years, and we look forward to continuing our work together. And again, I have handouts for you that will have an email address and our website, so please reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Linda. And once again, I apologize for not getting on the agenda, but we will be reaching out to you for a broader presentation. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, come on up and state your name and.
Hello, my name is Brent Lockley. I live in Hillview in Larkspur. Basically, I just want to draw attention to an issue that maybe had a policy that was set by the city, or at least by the permit department, and I want to draw some attention to it why we're actually going through Measure B. Measure B, as you guys all know, is repaving the streets. And then with that is every citizen got a letter from the Ross Valley District saying that we needed to replace our sewer laterals, our upper and lower sewer lateral. So what has happened and what has come to my attention is that people I'm actually the president of the Hillview Association, and there's 120 homes. And what happens is that everyone in Hillview is going to be repaved in May, or supposedly. And now everybody is being a good citizen and redoing their sewer laterals. So what's come to my attention is that we're actually required to pave more than actually the hole that they've actually created when they're actually repairing the sewer lateral. So it doesn't really make sense. And I have some images to kind of show you. I took some pictures of our streets, and I want to actually, I think Catherine, thank you so much. You actually passed my email on to Dan, the city manager. So I appreciate that. And the reply I got back was just like, well, this was the ordinance, and this is where we're going. It doesn't really bring into common sense is that the citizens are actually doing what the government is asking us to do, but it seems like we're being penalized more than we really need to be, or repaving something that's going to be repaved in 6 months. It just doesn't make sense. And so the reason was, so this is from Dan, the city manager, is the standards have been met in order to ensure integrity of the road and success of a future rehabilitation and paving maintenance of the city. So I have some images to kind of just show you. Right? Actually. So I don't know what order they're in. That first one is actually Harvard, which is basically a hole in the middle of the street, which is basically why we're doing Measure B. But there's other holes, or the pavement's just falling apart. And then the last one is actually the image of the hole that was actually repaired in front of my house when we actually did the sewer lateral. And if you look next to it, there's actually a trench that's actually just looks like it repaved just what the trench was. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm sorry. 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 I don't do this that often. I think the last time I was here probably about 10 or 15 years ago. So I just want to draw attention to this is that we're asking the citizens to pay more to do the sewer laterals. I know some cities only require their citizens to do the upper lateral and not the lower lateral. The city of Larkspur has determined that we're responsible for the whole thing. So I just don't understand why in 6 months, if we're going to repave the whole road, why are we asking our citizens to repave more than really needs to? The patch looks like every other patch, you know, in the town and actually in Hillview. So I ask you to reconsider this, you know, permit process, and think about, let's save our citizens money. It's about $1,500 on average or more to actually pave more than the hole that was created and patch. So it's nothing small. And then, so the other unintended consequences of this policy is that to do a sewer lateral about 5 years ago was probably about $5 or $6 grand. Mine cost me $9,800 plus a $1,400 because we had to repave more of the hole. And now the citizens of Larkspur and Hillview they're being charged $14,000 to $15,000 for a sewer lateral. So over a 5-year period, basically because of Measure B, and what's happening is that people are just getting kind of raked over the coals, right? 5 years, a 3x of, you know, labor hasn't gone up that much in 5 years. So I think adding additional cost or cost savings when we're actually repaving in the street anyways, I think would go a long way to help the citizens of Larkspur.
Can't discuss
Okay.
what's going on, but you can ask a simple question. But in public comment, as everyone knows, if an item has not been agendized, the council can't really discuss it in any detail at all. And no offense to your issue, it's just that's so that
Okay.
it's fair to everyone. And I did get your email, and
Yep.
we'll
Yep, thank
we'll
you.
continue in that follow-up.
And I'm sorry, my question is just quickly, what exactly are you asking us to do? Are you asking us to change the regulations so you have to pave a smaller amount when it's done? What are you asking?
Thank you. Yes, it's basically, all we really need to do is patch where they dug up the hole, or they cut the cement, or they cut the pavement, right? All I'm asking is that we just patch that, and then, because in 6 months, you're gonna basically do the whole road, all right? Anyways, so why add an additional expense to the people of the city,
Okay.
you know?
So that's clear, thank you. And we can't, as I said, go into further conversation with it, but I know, Julian, are you interested in weighing in?
I could provide a little comment.
Let's not overpass our bound but Sky will stop us if we go too close to policy talk.
All I would say is I think I understand your questions, and you can get my contact information off the city's website. I'm Julian Skinner, I'm the Public Works Director, and I can give you a little insight as to what the city's trench restoration policy is. It's not an extra cost, just a cost we have for all of our trench restorations, and it does take into account the fact that we're going to repave the street, and it is required to maintain the integrity of the street. And I just wanted to clear up one other point about the issue of the city requiring upper and lower laterals. The sewer lateral is under the jurisdiction of Ross Valley. Those are not city requirements. The city is simply weighing in on the trench restoration in the street. But I'll be happy to have further conversations with you. As I mentioned, my contact information is on the city's website.
So thank you for your comment, and we'll follow up on it.
Okay. So
Any-
the next steps are, someone will contact
Reach out
me,
to
or-
Julian.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Curtis Clemmer, Bear State Construction. I was the one that did the remodel on this building 4 years ago. I did the.
This building?
Yes, I did the building department, the windows, and then we came in, we discovered dry rot in the building. And Dan Schwartz, when Mary Lou, or was it
Mary Grace.
Mary Grace was let go, Dan Schwartz told me to get a hold of the architect and go forward with the restoration and their dry rot repair, which I did. I went forward and talked to the architect. We were conversing back and forth, and I ran up a bill where the total costs were above and beyond the contract. I submitted the bills to the city. Julian denied them because I did not have a signed change order. And under California law, you cannot benefit from my work without paying me. And obviously, I walked the building just now. There's no problems that I could see that's out of the ordinary. It looks like everything's going well. 4 years later, I'm only required a 1-year warranty. And the city took my supplier aside and bought the windows behind my back before I started the job. It was $128,000 or something like that purchase. That was a good 20% profit that was taken away from me. And I didn't say anything at the time, but I just want to get paid for the work I did. Now, we submitted a claim, it got denied. And so at this point, I'm not really sure what my repercussions are at this point with the California law, but I know there's other avenues I can take. I just want to ask for a friendly settlement on this issue. And there's still items that I left a screen in front of the building down below for a crawl space with a piece of wood in it, and it's still there today, 4 years later. And I don't know why that is. It's not what I told them they need to do something else with that, and it's left behind. I told them that the foundation under this building needs to be retrofitted. We did some retrofitting when we were working in the area, but it's still nothing what this building really needs. So you need to address that with the structural engineer. But I did my best for you guys. I donated time and material for your park over there. I don't know which park that was. Is that starts with H? I think it was.
Okay.
Anyways, I did Dolliver Park. I donated time and material over there above and beyond my contract. I had someone bid the stairs on the fire department, and he actually went bankrupt during the time that we were supposed to do the stairs. It was a steel manufacturer in San Rafael. He was begging for me to pay the money, and I never got paid from the city. I had to come out of pocket to pay that guy because he was struggling, and he ended up getting cancer. So it was, a heart tugger. Anyways, I just want to be straight up, and I want to do something that's fair along the line, but I want to get paid.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. This is all new information for us, so I'll get back to you, I think.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else from public would like to speak in public open time? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we now are moving on to number 3, which is our presentations. And tonight's presentation will be regarding the Bon Air Bridge Replacement Project, and there is a handout available in the back for anybody interested. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm Julian Skinner. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Larkspur. And so we've been coming to you every 6 months or so throughout the Bon Air Bridge project with a little update. And so this is the latest one. Just do a little bit of project review for those that may be seeing some of this information for the first time, and then talk a little bit about what's changed since the last time we were here, look ahead to what's coming up, and then also a couple of things that as an engineer I always track on projects is the cost and the schedule. And then we'll have some time for some questions at the end, just the basics of the project. So this was awarded by council after a public bid to Golden State Bridge. They're out of Benicia. They are allotted just over 4 years to complete the bridge replacement. It's $26.7 million. That's the awarded amount of the construction contract. And Golden State started on May 23rd of 2018. That was their first day out on the job site. And then just showing where we started, this was some of the first work. They demolished the north side of the bridge, or a portion of the north side. And then in the foreground here, this is a trestle. They built a trestle from which to work to build a new bridge. This is a north side trestle. You'll see later there's now a south side trestle, and the north side trestle is gone. First order of work they did was lay the foundation for the new bridge, which is 4 8-foot diameter piles, about 100 feet deep, down into Corte Madera Creek. So there's 4 of these piles on each side of the bridge, and then the 2 abutments at each side. This is what the pile looks like when it's finished and sticking out of the water, and then this boat-looking thing on top is called the bent cap. And that's ultimately what the girders will sit on. And so here is a photo of, this is about where we were when we came to you last time with an update. They were placing the girders. You see the work people in the foreground are standing on one of those boat-looking bent caps, and they're dropping a precast concrete girder onto these bent caps that span across the creek. And this is what it looked like from the air. So here we're looking kind of from Magnolia towards the hospital. From left to right, spanning the creek, is the north trestle. And then you can kind of see the three lines next to the right. Those are the alignments of the girders that had just been placed. And then the next piece over is the remainder of the old bridge. And then the piece the furthest to the right is the south trestle that's still out there today. The north trestle is now gone. The south trestle is still there. And then, as everybody who drives by knows, it's not just a bridge replacement. We are doing upgrades to Bon Air Road on either side and extending into Magnolia and into the South Alicio intersection. So those streets will be completely reconstructed and paved as part of the bridge project. So what's happened since the last time we were here in August? We poured the north side bridge deck. So on top of those girders, the strings of girders you saw, they put lots of plywood forming framework, and then they filled that area with concrete to create the deck that ultimately people will drive on, and they're actually driving on that half today. So this is all handwork, sort of. There's concrete trucks that come in on the trestle one by one, and then they pump the concrete onto the forms around the girders. And then you see the work people here in the foreground kind of moving it into place, and then there's a big, long screed that basically progressed down that side of the bridge and kind of smoothed the road surface behind it. And they did all of this work, about 350 tons or yards or so of concrete in one long day. And then on top of the bridge deck, once it was poured, and again, we're just pouring half of the bridge deck, which I'll get into a little bit later on, but pouring the foundations for the streetlights, and then the railings that go next to where the pedestrians will ultimately have a sidewalk on the bridge. Here's what it looked like just after we opened it. On the left, there's now a separated, it's only 5 feet wide, but it's separated from the vehicle traffic. This is for bikes and peds. Again, we do ask that cyclists walk their bikes across the bridge. It's pretty narrow. Not a whole lot of room to maneuver if you counter either a bike or a pedestrian coming the other way. And then the right is a photo of the new bridge deck that has some temporary yellow striping down the middle of it, and it's open for two-way traffic, one lane in each direction. And then you see a concrete barrier at the far side, which separates where the remainder of the old bridge is. There was a question at the last presentation we did about expansion joints. And so it's only about a 380-foot long bridge, so it doesn't have any intermediate expansion joints. Everybody remembers the Richmond Bridge and recent incidents with expansion joint problems. This bridge is not long enough to have intermediate expansion joints, so it only has room to expand at each abutment or each end of the bridge. And essentially, the red here is the concrete bridge deck that then sits on the blue, which is the concrete abutment. And so in between the red and the blue, there's a series of rubber seats that the deck sits on. And then there's some gaps that are about 1.5 inches wide, and those are all filled with styrofoam. So the dirt can't get in there, but the bridge has room to move back and forth. And then ultimately on the driving surface, all you'll see is about 1.5 inch gap that'll be filled with sealant. That'll be give the bridge room to move back and forth. But there's none of the big metal plates or teeth or anything like that that you would see on a bigger structure. There will have to be a sliding plate on the sidewalk portion where the expansion joint is. That's because that gap is too big for ADA, and so to protect people going across, there will be a metal plate over that gap for ADA reasons. So as I mentioned before, we are building the bridge in 2 halves so that we can keep it open. This is me standing in between the new bridge and the old bridge. So kind of to the left here, you can see that concrete barrier that's at the edge of where people are driving now. So that would be farther to the left. Then you see all the purple rebar that's sticking out of the new bridge deck, so that eventually will connect to the new half of the bridge. And then about a foot away is the edge of the old bridge. So that's kind of the tolerances that we're dealing with, squeezing every inch we can out of what we have to give the cars as much room and the pedestrians and the cyclists to get by. During this interim stage, it's going to be like this for about a year and a half or so until we can get the other half of the bridge completed and then join the two together. I've shown this exhibit a few times. I'm going to keep showing again. It's a little confusing, but it just kind of reinforces the fact that we're building it into two halves to keep it open. Here's what we started with, the old bridge. So we're looking at this in sections. So if you were driving along the bridge and you kind of cut it in front of you, this is what you would see, the railing off to the right of the bridge. And then remember, there were two railings off to the left because the old pathway was separated. So that's what this is representing. And this just going through the work. The first thing we did was cut off the very north half of the existing bridge to give us room to build the north half of the new bridge. So as we worked through the first phase, traffic went back and forth on what remained of the old bridge while we piece by piece built the piles, the bent cap, and then the deck of the new bridge, which is kind of where we are today. So minus the concrete barriers that I talked about before, this is kind of what we have today. The new half of the north new half of the bridge on the left of the screen and the remainder of the old on the right. The next piece of work, as I'll get into, is to demolish the remainder of the old bridge. We don't need it anymore. And then once that's out of the way, they can start to build kind of a mirror image of what we have there on the south side. And then there will be a little piece left in between where they'll close the two together. So here's a snapshot of where we were as of December 31st, which is where we've closed our books to date on the bridge. Just kind of tracking where we are calendar-wise. They're about 39% of the way through their allotted time to finish the work. So somewhere between a third and a halfway through their contractual time. I'm going to skip down to the bottom, which is how much money we've spent to date, or you could look at it as how much of the bridge we have built. So just under half of the bridge, which kind of makes sense because we've built half the bridge. But there's other components too, like a pump station, some of the intersection work, and some of that's progressed beyond 50% and some of it's less. So that's why that number's right around 50%. So again, the total bid was $26.7 million. We've spent just under 13 to date. So we're not yet at halfway through the schedule, but we're halfway through the work. So we do have some work windows that are going to slow us down a little bit in the coming months. So it's not one of those projects where we make the same progress every month. And then the other thing that we track here is change orders. So change orders are items that were not included in the original bid, but for various reasons, we end up paying the contractor for. They're either change conditions that they were not aware of and we have to pay them for additional work that they incur, or they are things that we've decided to add into the project because we think they add value and the price is right and the time is right to do it. So Caltrans limits projects to 10% contingency allowance, which is pretty much industry standard. You don't really want to go more than 10% over in change orders. So right now we're about halfway through the contract and we're at 1.3%. So we're well under that. This is kind of the overall project schedule. The kind of the milestone or the big picture items are on the left, and then the next column, the middle column, is kind of what the original schedule was, and then in the right, we're just kind of documenting as we go where we're at. So we've got a couple of things that we've crossed out on the left as we progress through. Pretty much everything on the south side is done. And so as you'll see about halfway down, one of the items says shift traffic to the south side of the bridge, which had a goal of winter, spring, and you'll see on the right, we accomplished that on December 27th of last year. And then the next item down is demolish the south side of the bridge. But so far, we've been hitting all of these items and we're on schedule. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the next coming stuff. But I also can't talk about schedule without constraints. Unfortunately, with all of the great progress we made towards the end of the next year to get the bridge open, we're in a little bit of a slowdown right now. And that's mainly because of the two items that are at the top here. That's the restricted work windows. The rail is a bird impact that restricts us from working on the north side of the bridge. The blue bar there is for in-water work, so there's a steelhead migration known in this creek, and so we're not allowed to work in the water during certain times of the year, including now. So that's why there's not a whole lot of activity out there at the moment. But as you see at the bottom, there's kind of a calendar that we have projected through, and that's one of the reasons why this contract is 4 years. We're keeping the bridge open to keep traffic moving, but also there's times when there's a lot of the work components we just can't undertake. So what will we be doing? So there is a storm drain pump station, which we could be working on because it's not in the water, but unfortunately we're waiting for PG&E to relocate some utilities that conflict with where the pump station is proposed to go. The next task item is demolishing the south side of the bridge. PG&E is not an issue there, but Comcast is. They have a utility that's has been on the bridge for a long time and was supposed to be relocated. However, they just realized that where they were going to relocate it to, there's some issues with the conduit there. So they need a little bit more time to relocate their facility. Fortunately, we're in one of those work windows where there's not a whole lot we can do. So it's not really impacting our schedule. But if anybody's driving by and wondering why everything's come to a halt, that's the reason. The next in-water work window, we need to move forward on the south side of the bridge. We need to get in the water and build a foundation. Opens up June 15th. So we basically have between now and June 15th to demolish the remainder of the south side bridge that's above the water. We can do that. It doesn't require us getting in the water, so we're allowed to proceed with that. So we're waiting for Comcast to remove their facility that's in conflict. And then we've got about 6 weeks of demolition work that we need to finish by June 15th. So not a huge schedule constraint, but definitely keeping on Comcast to get that utility out of the way so we don't get too close to June 15th. As soon as June 15th hits, we're allowed to get in the water. So the first thing we'll do is demolish whatever is remaining of the south side of the bridge that's in the water, because we can't do that now. So you'll see the superstructure of the bridge demolished over the next few months, and then as soon as we hit the in-water window, we'll be in the water removing all the piles. That's a permit requirement, is we have to remove all the piles from the old bridge down to 2 feet below the mud line. And then they'll install the cofferdams. So this is a repeat of what they did on the north side. So this is the big steel sheets that are laying on Bon Air now. We'll go back in the creek. They'll form these big dry areas in which they can drill the cast-in drilled hole piles. So cofferdams, that's the big dry areas. 4 of them they'll create within the creek for the new piles. Then you'll see the cast-in drilled holes, the 8-foot diameter. The big drill rigs will come in, same as they did on the north side. And then they'll start building the bent caps on top of those piles. And by about that time, we'll probably hit November 30th, which is when we can't get in the water anymore. So the next item after that is to pull the cofferdams and then put the girders on, but that's going to have to wait till June 15th of next year because we can't. That's in-water work. Unfortunately, we can't put the girders on because if we put the girders on, we can't pull the cofferdams out of the creek. So we have to wait for June 15th to pull the cofferdams out. So that's kind of a look ahead at the next work that's coming up. We do keep putting out these project worksheets, these updates. The last one talked about the traffic shift that we have out there, getting everybody onto the new bridge, and kind of the slowdown in the work because of the permit conditions. There is an email address if anybody has any questions that they want to submit about any of the work schedule or impacts. And you can get this information at the bonairbridge.com, our website. There's also a phone number there that people can leave messages at. So we'll be back probably in the fall. We'll see how work's progressing. If we think there's another major milestone that we need to update you of before that, we'll certainly come back and do that. And then before I open it up to questions, I do get some questions from time to time about why are we spending all of this money, or Caltrans money, actually the Fed's money, on replacing the bridge. Nothing wrong with the old bridge. Well, here's a snapshot now that we have a trestle next to an eye level at the substructure of the old bridge. Concrete's not supposed to look like that, especially not concrete that's holding up a bridge. So definitely some issues there with the old structure. And then with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We'll start with any member of the council who'd like to ask Julian a question. Go ahead, Dan.
Really just a comment. Every time I drive through there, especially during periods where the traffic is normally, complex and heavy. I marvel at the operation and how well it's all been managed, and I probably don't say it enough, but thank you for all the careful work and making it look so easy. I think the scale of this is something that we've never had to do before, and certainly, given the local street conditions, traffic-wise, those complexities just make it orders of magnitude more complicated. So I just
Good.
can't thank the staff enough.
Any other questions of Julian? Do you have some, Gabe?
Yeah, Julian, thank you so much. And one thing that was really helpful was to understand the environmental side of the delays. So I had no idea. Just one question: when you start a big $26 million project, there is a lot of uncertainty in groundbreaking, like the 10% margin for growth or work changes. Given that you're halfway through it, do you feel like the 1.3 of surprises, 1.3 million, is likely to stay at that level? Is it seem like the being on schedule and on budget is more and more likely now that you're halfway through it, or are there any other unknowns that you're working with?
Well, I certainly don't want to jinx anything, but I would say it's probably reasonable to expect that we're halfway through and we're at 1.3%. We probably are going to get up to 2.5%. But yeah, there are, especially when we get into not so much the bridge itself, because that's new. It's a replacement. We're removing the old bridge and building a new bridge. Typically, the unforeseens are when you're working in more existing conditions. You're working with Magnolia. So, for instance, as we get into regrading the intersections, we already did Magnolia, and quite a few of the 1.3% that you see there are in the existing street where we came across utilities that weren't marked, or the utility owner didn't even know were there, that we have to compensate our contractor for any delays or accommodating those. So I would imagine as we move further down the project and we're getting into South Alicio to do some of the road work there, there's certainly the potential for unforeseens. So I would, at this point, I don't have any other information other than I would roughly project that we're halfway through and we're at 1.3, we're going to end up 2.6 or roughly. I don't have any more real foresight other than that at the moment.
Julian, looking at your schedule, I didn't see any plan this year for a complete closure like we did about a year ago. Are there, when we had that full weekend closure?
Right. So the full weekend closure, there's 3 scheduled throughout the project. As you mentioned, we had one before, and that was when we put the girders on the bridge. They're big, long concrete members, and certainly don't want people driving back and forth on the bridge when those things are being swung into place. So there is obviously the girder placement for the south side of the bridge that's proposed. And then the third closure for the street would be when they have to do the concrete closure in the middle and bring the two halves of the bridge together. Based on the permit windows and the progress of how the drilling and the bents went last year, we don't think we're going to get to the girder installation this summer. It's going to be next year. So that would be the next road closure. And then probably in the 4 to 5 month period after that, when they bring the two bridges halves together, would be the third closure. So as the schedule looks right now, there would not be a road closure this year, but it would be next summer.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll ask if anybody from the audience has a question they would like to ask about this presentation of the Bon Air Bridge Replacement Project. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thank you, Julian, for that presentation. And we will move on to item number 4, approval of the consent calendar. Do I have any council member who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar for discussion? Do I have anybody from the audience who'd like to remove a consent calendar item? All right, seeing none, I will accept a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
I move to approve consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No.
And I'm actually going to abstain since I wasn't here, so I don't know if I could verify that it's accurate or not.
Okay, so we have one abstention. Do Terrific. So we're moving on to city manager's oral report. Our city manager is at a work-related function, so we don't have a city manager oral report, but is there anything, Julian, that you wanted to pass on from him? Okay. 6 is council members' oral reports and comments. Who would like to begin or has something they would like to share? Nothing? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've got nothing, so you can pass me.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, just briefly, Councilman Haroff, who's not here tonight, and myself, we met with the mobile home park group and the ad hoc committee, and just reporting out that we had the first meeting. We're meeting with stakeholders and trying to set a timeline for reporting back to the council
Good.
for recommendations.
Thank you for that. I noticed some of the participants have left the room already, but I'm sure they'll hear the information. Dan, anything? So I just had one quick thing. I co-chair PDEP, which is the County Public Disaster Education Committee, which is part of the County Disaster Council. And we had a very good presentation on Monday from Chief Bill Tyler from the Novato Fire Prevention District about evacuations and evacuation planning in Marin. And there is some really interesting mapping work being done in a contract that the Novato Fire Protection District has put out, and then we'll roll out, hopefully, to many of the other cities, a good mapping, descriptions of evacuation patterns and plans, and a really good visual product. So hopefully he'll be presenting at the DC3, which is in March, so I'll have a little bit more information. But it is in its early stages, or its midline stages, and not available to the public yet. But I'm very curious about getting it down here so that we can have excellent evacuation map planning and route planning. All right, so we do not have any more council members' reports. Now I'm opening a public hearing. Item 7.1, which is not going to be a very large hearing, but it is a public hearing for those who are interested in weighing in. But we have a small, very small correction to the Central Marin Sanitary Service rates that we voted on at our previous meeting for the garbage and recycling collection of 2020. And you can see in the staff report, we would like a staff report and a discussion.
Thank you. Again, not much of a staff report for this one. We are requesting that you hold a public hearing to correct Marin Sanitary Service rates that were attached to the resolution that you passed previously. So on January 15th, you did hold a public hearing regarding Marin Sanitary's increasing their rates to 3.99%, and you received a presentation and opened a public hearing on that, and then you did ultimately adopt Resolution 120. However, it was later noted that one of the exhibits to the resolution contains some erroneous numbers, and so we've determined that the correct course of action is to hold another public hearing again, to adopt the sanitary service rate increase of 3.99%. So that's not a change, but this has attached to it the corrected exhibits with the rates. So with that, I'll pass it over for any questions and request that you open a public hearing.
Mm-hmm. Are there any questions of the staff before we open the public hearing? It's mostly a correction to the hillside collection streets, is what I understand it to be. All right, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item or ask questions on the change that we're making to the Marin Sanitary Service rates? Nope. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Do you have any further questions on this of our Public Works Director? No? All right, well then I'll take a motion to approve Resolution 0320.
Motion made.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Great. That is the bulk of our meeting, but we are now going to adjourn to closed session. And then we will return after closed session and report out if there's anything to report out about. Thank you very much. And I would like a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned until February 19th.